So anyhow, we're so excited and so proud and so happy. It's been such an honor to witness this program growing in distinction, visibility, and importance over the last 10 years, bringing us to a glorious promontory from which we can view the launching of the careers of 40 new American poets, selected by 40 of our most distinguished and beloved contemporary poets. The stature and dedication of the judges is a key component of this program. Each of them not only select a winner, whose manuscript will be published in this elegant fashion, they also introduce the winners with essays that serve as fulsome guides to the pleasures and rewards of each chapbook, while also illustrating each judge's criteria for assessing and blessing thoroughly exciting new work. Charles Simic introduced his choice, Misty Harper's Guarding the Violins, in 2005 in this way. In every one of her poems, there is a surprise waiting, an image or a phrase that is instantly memorable. The danger of good poetry is that it gets inside our heads and stays there. Some poets sneak in through our imagination, and some use our ears to break and enter, so that for a long time afterwards, we see the world with their eyes and hear their voices inside us. Misty Harper will do that to you. Rosanna Warren wrote of her choice, Andrew Seguin's Black Anecdote. I dog-eared almost every page of this manuscript. So fetching are its surprises, its veerings, and associations. I want you to picture the equally heartfelt, astute, and eloquent tribute, introducing all the other outstanding chapbooks in this great program, and we have the full set of them here displayed somewhere. And I'll mention just one of the judges from each year: John Ashbery, Claudia Rankine, Lee Young Lee, Yusef Kamanyaka, Mark Strand, Terrence Hayes, Arthur Z., Susan Howe, Vijay Seshadri, and Cornelius Eady. A list of judges and winners is on your seat. Please take a copy and visit www.poetrysociety.org to view the titles and to sample new poems by each of the winners, a feature curated by our wonderful web editor, Brett Fletcher Lauer. Of the many splendid statements by Cornelius in praise of his choice, I'll quote just one. Claudia Rankine's poems give the reader the sense of a multi-layered world, every surface in it loaded with possible meanings. The tripwire, in the title, the tripwire we trigger when we dream or fear or remember or write. Camille's chapbook sold out rather quickly, we're proud to say, but she's told us you may request a PDF if you don't have your own copy. And we've provided a sign-up sheet for just that purpose by the front desk. Please keep that in mind as you listen to her read her brilliant poems. Camille will read first tonight, followed by Cornelius, whom she will introduce, and then they'll have a conversation which you will be very welcome to join when the signal is given. Many thanks for joining us tonight in honor of this program and this judge, who with Cave Canem has done so much for American poetry, and this chapbook author, his choice, Camille Rankine. Please welcome her.
Hello. I just want to say thank you, Alice, for that introduction, and to the PSA and the Strand for having me here tonight. I'm really excited to be here with Cornelius, who chose my chapbook. It was a really great moment for me when I learned that I had won this prize and that Cornelius had chosen me. I've always really admired his work. I admired him as a poet and a person. So I felt really honored that he was the one to give me this gift in a way. So I'm going to read a few poems from the chapbook, which you can get as a PDF but not buy anymore. I'm going to start with the first poem, History. Our stone wall was built by slaves, and my bones are paid for. We have two of everything, twice heavy in our pockets, warming our two big hands. This is the story as I know it. One morning the ships came as foretold, and death, pearl-handled, almost incompletely. How cheap a date I turned out to be. Each finger weak with the memory, lost teeth, regret. Our ghosts walk the shoulders of the road at night. I get the feeling you've been lying to me. Still life with spurious picturesque. The thought insists upon itself, the dead body of it, what you have put together. The hillside won't make sense. You run through the trees, but the trees lead nowhere. Didn't the sky come down on you like? Didn't you think you saw? The irrational forest, your stupid mouth, a breath stillborn. Define lake, ink stain, the cold, cold water, the heart's slow beat. There is no imagining anymore. You awake and everything is flatter. You go outside and there is nothing to see. Little children, my apologies. I was considering the sea, all the colors it has taught me, how water is at once both life and deadly. In my comfortable way, I come to learn the dangers are many and oblique. This microwave will kill me, this plastic bottle, this air, this meat, my debit card and its hidden fees. I'm telling you, I have no power here. I'm just a dummy swaddled in worry and want, tethered by 2 small rooms, a few small thoughts. You know how the body is, a fragile thing. Phosphorus gleams, clings to your skin and won't let go. And my great sleep spreads out into the day like milk spilled on the cold tile floor. I am thinking of you. The dark is chilly, framed by the window. Outside, they are constructing another tower, a high-rise this time. The progress is quick. The walls are bones. One naked bulb glows in each half-built home. So I think I'll read one more from the chapbook and then I'll share some newer poems. This is called Letter to the Winding Sheet. After the snowfall jewels my hair. My church shoes muddy the bedspread. Crazy, you called me, not much of a lady. Flip up the light switch. A child, I act a child. At night, I hold a postcard. 2 plums adorn a plum tree, what we could be. The door tight in its door frame. The window keeps shutting on me. In every dream I am asleep. Your fingers closed around my wrists. Your breathing steals the room. You won't explain my shrinking vision, why I never knew enough about the topiary. Every limb is a root, every tree a tree. Okay, so now for some newer poems. This is Symptoms of Prophecy. In the new century, we lose the art of many things. For example, at the beep, I communicate using the wrong machine. I call to say we have 2 lives, and only one of them is real. When the phone rings, you could be anybody. In the evening, you are homeless and hunting for good light, as safe a place as any to make a bed for the night. In both my lives, my nerves go bust. I'm certain that I'm not as I appear, that I'm a figment and you're not really here. The struggle is authenticity. I have a message. You must believe me. So the next poem I wrote It's kind of inspired by the supermoon. I don't know, I'm sure you've all heard of the supermoon. It's like the moon, but it's like especially awesome. So recently this happened, and I was all excited about it because I feel like in the city I'm always like, oh, nature, things are happening in nature, the sky, I get excited about things like that because it's so rare to witness something like that in the city. So I got excited about it, and then the supermoon came, and that night I got drunk and forgot to look up at the moon. And I was like, no, what does my life even mean? So anyway, this poem kind of started out from that event and traveled elsewhere. This is called Syzygy. I was told tonight the moon would be impossible, but I am too drunk. My eyes toward the sky, I feel I would come loose from the earth. A short flight, I believe. I've bitten off more than can be held at bay, in which case it helps to think collectively. However unlikely, here we are, rooting for the doomed gazelle, or we are the gazelle. We are the lion or the birds of prey. The land-locked boy daydreaming an expanse of blue. The earth curves. We mark the dates and keep waking up, turning the clock forward and back. In the quiet, we step quietly. In the audience, we stand and demand more. We clap our hands. In captivity, we carve our name into the floor. Okay, so despite my lack of accent, I'm Jamaican, and my family is Jamaican, and I have been thinking recently about my Jamaicanness versus my Americanness, and also about, especially considering recent politics thereof, the position of the immigrant in this country and their relationship to this country. So I wrote this poem sort of out of those ponderings. This is called The Free World. I bind my old grievances to a helium balloon. A long memory, I have been warned, is a curse. Everywhere I go, someone has something they must say about you. Nobody knows who we are. Wouldn't you say, nobody agonizes like we do. Elsewhere is a promise and a threat. I have been proscribed compassion of the wrong sort, and so I am alone. I am invisible within you. Seeking companionship, I spend my afternoons before the windows of pet shops and strangers trying to decide. After all, I was told I could have everything. I thought this was meant to be a romance. I was delivered here in order to love you. I was delivered here and ordered to love you. If we could be friends, I wore this new dress for you. I actually did wear this new dress for you guys. I'd already written that, but just... Okay, the next poem, let's see. I'm experimenting with this new thing that I like to call winging it right now. So I am just deciding on the fly. So let's see, I think I'll read next. Okay, yeah. This is The Current Isolationism. In the half-light, I am most at home. My shadow is company. When I feel hot, I push a button to make it stop. I mean, the stain on my mind I can't get out. How human I seem. Like modern man, I traffic in extinction. I have a gift. Like an animal, I sustain. A flock of birds, when touched, I scatter. I won't approach until the back is turned. My heart betrays. I confess. I am afraid. How selfish of me. When there's no one here, I have the distance between our bodies infinitesimally. In this long passageway, I pose against the wallpaper, dig my heels in, catch the light. In my vision, the back door opens on a garden that is always in bloom. The dogs are chained so they can't attack like I know they want to. In the next yard over, honeybees swarm, and their sound is huge. Okay, so I'll finish with this. Tender. Dear Patriot, dear Catastrophe, none of this means what we thought it did. Dear bone fragments, dear displacement, dear broken skin, I am in over my head. Dear prisoner, dear wounded, you have earned our respect. Dear glad hands, curbed dog, dear perfect object, the same night awaits us. Dear put upon, the day folds over and begins again. Dear bad animal, dear caged thing, there was something about you. Thank you. So I'm not just standing here because I want you guys to keep clapping for me, although that's great. And thank you so much for coming tonight and braving the heat. I want to introduce now the next poet to read, Cornelius Eady. And I'll start by just reading you a little bit about him and his accomplishments. Cornelius Eady is the author of 8 books of poetry, most recently Hard-Headed Weather, New and Selected Poems. His second book, Victims of the Latest Dance Craze, was awarded the Lamont Prize from the Academy of American Poets. And his collection, Brutal Imagination, was a finalist for the National Book Award. In 1996, with writer Toy Derricott, Cornelius co-founded Kavikanem Foundation, an organization dedicated to the artistic and professional growth of African American poets. Eady has been a teacher for more than 20 years and is currently a professor of English and the Miller Family Endowed Chair in Literature and Writing at the University of Missouri, Columbia. June Jordan has praised Cornelius Eady's writing for the way it leads and then cuts a line. Following the laughter and the compassionate pith of a dauntless imagination, these poems beeline or zigzag always to the jugular, the dramatic and unarguable revelation of the heart. I love the summation of his work for how it captures and highlights the humanity present in his poetry. His work invites, it amuses, it destroys. This poetry is everyday triumph and disaster, music and truth. It makes you ache, makes you celebrate. It at once bruises and heals. Please join me in welcoming Cornelius Eady.
Thanks, Camille. Let me get situated here. Oh, indeed. Well, it's good to be able to do a reading in one's neighborhood, as opposed to having to get on a plane or a train or something to get here. It's really great to be at the Strand and also be part of this. I really, truly believe in chapbooks, and I was very happy that that the PSA has this series that allows some sort of entryway or portal for younger writers to deliver, at least a little bit of where they're heading. When I read Camille's manuscript, you all heard the first poem, and the first poem. A lot of times people will ask you, what do you do when you're judging a contest? Why do you pick this manuscript over that manuscript? And the thing with Camille was that, I read that first poem, and then it just kept haunting me. It just kept turning over. I kept reading the other manuscripts, and the other manuscripts were all worthy, and they were all good writing. There was no sloppy writing in any of the bunch that I read. But I just kept returning to that first poem about how it was put together and what she was saying, and it kept nagging at me, and at a certain point it started to haunt me, and then and after a certain point it just closes off that manuscript, or the winning manuscript will close off all other possibilities for you. You just have it like a bad rock and roll riff in your head. Just won't go away, but you can't stop singing it. So that's kind of the effect that manuscript had on me, and it was really wonderful to be able to then find out that, you know, I had actually picked Camille, someone that I actually knew. It's a blind test, so it wasn't as if there was it really was a blind contest. And I didn't know Camille's work well enough to recognize it, to know what it was. And I was just simply astonished by the beautiful way this poet was singing, and just wanted to know who the hell this person was. You know, it was wonderful to find out who it was. And as you can tell from the older poems that the newer poems that she's reading, you know, there's more of that where that comes from, right? So let me read a few poems, and then we can have a discussion. It is you know, it's very interesting to read here, because one of the people who work here at the Where Books area was actually my radio producer back in the 1980s. Rick was actually started his life off as a radio producer, and we were trying to catch up really quick, and I realized we were trying to do 30 years in 2 minutes, and it was really complicated to do. But it reminded me, you know, that back in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, I was actually on a radio show. I actually produced a radio show for poetry on WBAI, and it was really wonderful to see that Rick is still. He was the arts and entertainment editor for BAI at the moment, crazy enough to let people in who had a crazy idea they want to do a poetry show, and let them do a poetry show. And nice to see that he's shown up. He now lives still surrounded by books. He hasn't fully escaped them. Anyway, I'm going to read a New York poem to start with, and it's a true story. And it sort of happened. It actually starts. It's actually this poem really starts on West 12th Street, just a few blocks here, down the street from the new school. So it's also about my wife and I buying a house in upstate New York in a small town called Accra, which is close to Cairo, and which is close to Woodstock, is in Greene County, of course, living in New York all these years, we never owned property. We were always renters up until this moment. The white couch that I found on the curb, a door or two down from the new school in New York, just at the moment my wife and I were looking for furniture for our new house. This is how marriage works. Guy and gal fall in love. Gal moves in. The bachelor pad with the clean white IKEA sofa is out. This is the way marriage works. Guy and gal buy house. Guy and gal fight over what should go in it. Both problems get settled in the street. I sit on the couch. The couch is mine. I grab my cell phone. I call my wife at work. I found a couch. I cannot move, or we lose the couch. The couch is perfect. The couch is free. I wait for Sarah. I guard the couch. Don't touch the couch. Don't consider the couch. And now it starts to rain. I will not move from the couch. And now the sun goes down. I will not budge from the couch. Sarah arrives. The couch is perfect. The couch is free. We guard the couch. We are too weak to lift the couch. We are too few to carry the couch. We fear the rain will soak the couch. We are on the couch, but let's be real. It's New York City. We're easy pickings on the couch. A truck might roll by and take the couch. Maybe we're not meant to have this couch. Maybe we're not worthy. Maybe the Greek gods are having fun with us. Look at them, fools! They will not budge from the couch. Then the torrent, the East Village skinhead, the cops. We need a car to carry the couch. We need some ropes to tie down the couch. One of us must leave the couch. One of us must guard the couch. I am the one who leaves the couch. I am the one who looks for Sarah's mom, who gives me her key, who lends us her car. I am the one who walks the streets searching for rope. Anyone who thinks New York never sleeps should search for rope after 9 p.m. I drip from grocery to magazine shop. What do they think I'm after? My friend, I need something heavier than twine. I examine package after package like a wine snob. Too thin, too short, not enough heft. Maybe they grunt at what I choose and wait for the headline tomorrow. Oh, yeah, that guy. Night has fallen on the couch. Rain is falling on the couch. My wife is sitting on the couch. What will happen next? How shall we lift the couch? How will we tie down the couch? How far will the couch go before it slips its strings and flies stone-like to the road? And who shall lie beneath the couch? And who shall sue us for this couch? This is when the doorman arrives. He's watched us find and guard the couch. He's watched us find a car to carry the couch. He sees us as we try to lift the couch. This is where the doorman arrives, like the woodchopper who breaks down the door and saves the red-hooded child, like the wand in the cartoon witch's hand who changes time, space, luck. This is the man who has the rope. This is the man who brings his muscles, and the couch is lifted to the roof of the tiny Chevy, and his rope becomes a tight fist of knots. And he tells us the story of how the couch landed on the curb just before I walked by, and how this happens all the time in the ex-East Bloc country he comes from. All this moving, he says, this is living. This is life. Handyman. The furnace wheezes like a drenched lung. You can't fix it. The toilet babbles like a speed freak. You can't fix it. The fuse box is a nest of rattlers. You can't fix it. The screens yawn the bees through. Your fingers are dumb against the hammer. Your eyes can't tell plum from plums. The frost heaves against the door jambs. The ice turns the power line to brittle candy. No one told you about how things pop and fizzle. No one schooled you in spare parts. That's what the guy says, but doesn't say, as he tosses his lingo at your apartment dweller's ears, a bit bemused, a touch impatient. After the spring melt has wrecked something, stopped something, after the hard wind has lifted something away, after the mystery has plugged the pipes, that rattle coughs up something sinister. An easy fix, but not for you. It's different when you own it, when it's yours, he says as the meter runs, then smiles like an adult. One more in that line. I have this friend, and I split my time these days between here and Columbia, Missouri. And among other things, the one thing I've sort of noticed is this sort of almost proud contempt we intellectuals have about not being able to do stuff. You know, not being able to fix things. We're almost stubbornly proud of that. We can't do stuff, you know. And the husband of one of my colleagues, Leaky Barnstone, he's a really sweet guy. He's not very verbal in that sense, but he knows how to do stuff. He can fix things. I was thinking about that because there's now, as we're talking, there was these horrible storms that hit Oklahoma, and now there's a big storm over Columbia, Missouri. I was checking in the Weather Channel before I came over, and I was thinking, let's hope nothing happens. But if something happens, what will you want? A book or a guy with a hammer? You'd want a guy with a hammer, wouldn't you? All certain kinds of intelligences there. Anyway, the hammer. I still don't know what to do with the hammer. In my hands, it feels like my tongue looking for the right way to say, please, or don't shoot, in, say, French or Swahili. Best not to get yourself in that sort of situation to begin with. But my wife and I, we bought this house, and things break, and things fall away from other things. And so, the fixing, the hook, the nail, the painting that might dazzle that corner of the wall, the beautiful chair that could be saved. Don't I wish I could hear my father now, to finish a conversation we never began, what we used to think we were owed. I don't know how to work the hammer, so the hammer misses the nail, scuffs the wall. So the hammer hits the nail, a glancing blow, and it bends the nail away from its true purpose. So the hammer hits the thumb. This is why this house is filled with hesitation and slow to mend. So enough of those. But let me read, because we haven't got a lot of time. Let me read one poem that comes from my family, and it's really about what I thought at the time was a true story how my father and my mother met, and the poem I'm about to read to you is the story that she told me. When I'm in a workshop. Or when I'm interviewed, which I might be interviewed now after this reading, people will ask you questions like, what's your inspiration and how do you write and how do poems come to you? And I have this theory that sometimes you've done something good. The poetry guides love you. You've done something. You've cleaned something up, or you walked an old lady across the street, or you've done something, some cosmic karma thing, and the poetry guides will be very kind to you and give you a poem. And what I mean by that, simply you'll be walking into something and you just see it and you say that you'll know that all you have to do is go home and put it down. You don't have to mess with it. You don't have to turn it into anything else. You just got to get it down on paper and you've got a poem. Poetry guides are happy. So I thought, my mother told me this story, I thought that was it. That was I had done something good, and the poetry guides were pleased and were rewarding me by giving me this go home and write the poem. And I did. I went home and I wrote the poem, and I wrote the poem down. And then the book got published, and then I asked my mother the same question, and she told me a totally different story. Totally different answer. Which was I take now to mean, she's been dead for a few years, but I take that to mean on some level, I don't owe you everything. You're a writer, but you don't get everything. There's some stuff you don't get. But this is a story I am stuck with. I'm a fool to love you. Some folks would tell you the blues is a woman, some type of supernatural creature. My mother would tell you, if she could, about her life with my father, a strange and sometimes cruel gentleman. She would tell you about the choices a young black woman faces. Is falling in with some man a deal with the devil, in blue terms, the tongue we use when we don't want nuance to get in the way, when we need to talk straight? My mother chooses my father after choosing a man who was, as we sing it, of no account. This man made my father look good. That's how bad it was. He made my father seem like an island in the middle of a stormy sea. He made my father look like a rock. And is the blues the moment you realize you exist in a stacked deck? You look in a mirror at your young face, the face my sister carries, and you know it's the only leverage you've got. Does this create a hurt that whispers, how you gonna do? Is the blues the moment you shrug your shoulders and agree? A girl without money is nothing, dust to be pushed about by any old breeze. Compared to this, my father seems, briefly, to be a fire escape. This is the way the blues works its sorry wonders. Makes trouble look like a featherbed. Makes the wrong man's kisses a healing. And I think we'll stop there. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So we're going to chat for a little bit now, and then if you would like to chat with us, we would like that. So I just want to start off by maybe talking a little bit about, so this is me winging it again. So when we, during the chapbook reading a couple of years ago, when you were introducing me, you said something that really stuck with me, which was you were talking about that importance of saying yes to younger poets. And that really was so important for me. Those moments when people have said yes to me, and especially with the chapbook, it really propels you forward so much, and it makes you feel capable of achieving more. And I wondered if there's a moment in your poetic history where it's that a significant moment where someone said yes to your work.
Yeah, sure. There's always, it's actually just not one yes, it's a number of yeses, right? And since I'm almost 60 now, I can safely say that more people said yes than said no. Or when people said no, they said it at a certain time when when the blow wouldn't really do major damage. So one of the early people to say yes to me was my high school teacher. I think if you scratch most writers, you will find some educational connection, some teacher, some workshop, somebody who simply for some reason takes mercy on you and simply says, I think you got something there. I had a high school teacher in John Marshall High School in Rochester, New York, my hometown, that just somehow got across to me that what I did, the little scribbling that I was doing, was actually good. I mean, it wasn't just, and it wasn't, all that's good, which is another way of doing it. It was really kind of a considered good. It was sort of I knew the way she was saying it and the way she was framing it, that it wasn't just her being nice. It was something that's actually saying, I think there's a spark, there's something there. She just kept fanning it, right? Yeah. So that was the main yes. That was the main person. But then other people along the way, workshop people, publishers, you'd be amazed when you go back and look back at all the different ways your life sort of spreads. The people you run into at particular moments that really will tell you, or reinforce the idea that you really have something, right? So that was the main yes, but it was a lot of other yeses that I encountered. One of the sometimes it's not even a yes, sometimes it's just access. One of the things that was really important to me, since I'm sitting in a kind of a library, was that it was a library. The Randall Memorial Library in downtown Rochester, New York, had an incredible poetry section. A really great section. There was a poet in town who I've never asked this question, but I always suspected, named Jim LaVilla Haviland, who was buying books at the library at that time. and was buying all the New Directions and the City Light books and all the other stuff that you couldn't find in the bookstores, because we didn't have any bookstores in Rochester when I was growing up. There was this one place called Scranton's that was kind of a stationary bookstore that just had things like The Prophet and whatever else was going in. So you couldn't really find really good poetry books. So you had to go to the library to really run them down. And I think it was Jim. I won't swear to it, but my suspicion is that it was Jim Lavelle Hamlin had all of these different books. So when I started getting really curious, when my high school teacher started saying you got something there, I started becoming interested in reading poetry. So, because most of the time I was a kid that was hanging out in the AV section because that's where you get the records. All the cool records would come into the AV section, so I'd hang out there. And then I moved from the third floor to the first floor, where the literature was and where all the poetry books were. And then when I was ready to start looking for poets to model, there was Ginsberg and there was Baraka and there was all these books that was bought by a person that I didn't know at the time, right?
Yeah.
So that's another yes.
Yeah. I think it's funny, actually. I had a similar experience with a teacher in high school where I wrote something that they...
Exactly.
And it's like that moment when someone was really listening to you.
They're really listening to you, it's a certain kind of listening, right? It isn't just, that's nice, Camille. Right? You write poetry,
exactly. And I think that, especially when you're younger, in high school, when someone takes you seriously like that, you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And it really does. I think that, that really, I think of that moment as like a moment when I kind of propelled me forward to thinking maybe I should really do this,
Exactly.
So that's really, that was in high school, my junior year of high school, my English teacher, Michael Jarmer.
See, right.
I remember him. It was in Oregon. I grew up in Oregon. So that was Rex Putnam High School in Milwaukee, Oregon, which is outside of Portland. And he actually I know now, at the time he's just like Mr. Jarmer, but I know now he's a writer as well. He went to Warren Wilson to get an MFA. And so, it's just that moment where I can kind of pinpoint as the moment where I'm like, I should maybe start thinking about taking this seriously as a pursuit. You know?
Joanna Mason wasn't a writer, but her husband Robert was. Right? He was a poet.
Yeah, that's
right. So there you have it. Right.
So kind of thinking along those lines, you have a lot of, in your work, you have a lot of opportunity to be in a position like both, contest judging and through Cave Canem and as a teacher, you have a lot of opportunity to be in a position to nurture and kind of discover younger poets and newer voices. Can you talk a little bit about your feelings about that role of mentorship? And
well, I think it really is simply an extension of what happened to me. Really, and to go back to what I was saying earlier, it just really feels like I was very lucky. I was very lucky that I ran into a group of people that was simply just not telling me, you're stupid or you're crazy or you're out of your mind, you shouldn't do this, or, who do you think you are? But this kept doing it. And so, and because somebody was nice to me, that gave me the model, simply like you have to be able to find yourself, but you also have to be able to just have some sort of way of negotiating your way through. And sometimes you need someone to simply say, a pat on the back, have you read this book? I will read your manuscript. It really comes down to that. It keeps you going, right? Because you still have to live your life. You still have stuff to do and things to struggle through. Because it's life. But it helps. It helps to have somebody around or knowing there's somebody else out there that's tracking you, that knows who you are and what you're up to. So since it happened to me, I think that's probably just what I just modeled back. The thing that with Joanna, later when I was in college and I ran to Srila Ray, a poet from India that had moved over in the 60s and went to the Iowa workshop and then went to Buffalo and got married and then moved to Rochester. She was my mentor at Empire State, and she went as far as allowing me to live in her house for about a year. While she went off to India, I was living upstairs as a roomer, and then when Sarah and I got married that summer, our first apartment was in their basement, and we lived there for about a year. She had a year off from college, and we spent that year off there. So that was total support. Subsidized rent, all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't have to be that huge, what I mean? But it's just that, and little things. Like, for example, my friendship with Linda Paston, for example, when I was a younger poet, and Roland Flint in Maryland, that was just so important to me. They had people who I knew were really great writers, but who were always encouraging and welcoming. So I never felt totally alien, right? Well, I mean, Linda and Roland were really great people, you know. And they had a sense of community with them. Roland would have everybody over to his house, and you'd be, you know, same with Srila. You know, you'd have people over, and you get to be part of this group, not family per se, but this group that's has the same passion that you have, but they're a little more further down the road than you are. They've got publications, or they're teaching, or they're working it out, and you see it as a possibility for yourself. Or the first workshop I went into in Rochester, New York, was run by a woman named Patricia Janus. And Pat Janus was, again, an older writer, but you know, not old at the time, but older than me, and old enough that she had publications in places like the Atlantic. And and also through that, got me into teaching, because the workshop I was in, most of the writers there taught in the Poets in the Schools program. So through the poets, they were my entry into teaching poetry, which I never would have imagined in 1,000 years before running into them, that was even a possibility that you can actually make a living. And it was around that time you get the idea that maybe you could actually make a living as a writer. Right. Maybe that's not a crazy idea. Well, it's a crazy idea, but not totally, but a possibility. Insane. Yeah, but a possibility, right? Yeah. So knowing that, I guess you have to know there's possibilities, or windows or doors, as Lucian Clifton used to put it. You know, mirrors and doors, I should say. Windows or doors, but mirrors. But basically, you have to see yourself reflected, and then you have to realize you can actually go through the doors. You know, and I think that was probably, again, that came from the atmosphere that I came from. So that's kind of the atmosphere you sort of get when we're finally able to formalize that with Kaveh Khanum, right? Right. That's the idea.
Yeah. So thinking about that kind of work, and also Kaveh Khanum. So I think Kaveh Khanum has been, from my perspective, has been an organization that's really helped to kind of push the landscape of what American poetry is in like a progressive direction, an inclusive direction. And thinking along those lines, is there something about, or anything about what's happening in poetry today, like American poetry's present and its future, that excites you or frightens you, the possibilities of what's happening now or what might happen next?
It's always foolish to try to imagine what's going to happen next, but that's what excites me, right? Yeah. It's the unexpected. It's the X factor, right? Nobody saw a thing like Kaveh Khanum coming, and it was an X factor, and now it's certainly sort of like a factor of life, and people now acting like we're some sort of, establishment kind of thing. But no one imagined the idea 16, 17 years ago. So we were an X factor, right? No one could anticipate. You couldn't see it the way that, there was the Darkroom Collective, obviously. They were there, but they weren't doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. It wasn't exactly the same way they were doing Kaveh Khanum, and no one really sort of figured that out, right? So I never know. I'm always happy to be surprised. In a pleasant way. There's always unpleasant surprises, but I like to be open to pleasant surprises. It's something that's going to happen that I'm not expecting that's going to happen. Other than simply just, I think there's the distinction between what you're saying as opposed to what trends and fads are, which is a totally different deal to me.
Right.
Right. How many people remember cowboy poetry? Right, I'm right. Right. A few years ago, cowboy poetry. You couldn't walk through without running into a cowboy poet, right? And everyone thought that was it. It was the fad. It was this but it was a fad. And I'm not disparaging cowboy poetry by saying that. It's a real thing and it's in the world. But it comes and goes. Mm-hmm. So some stuff will always come and go. Right, and some stuff will always sustain, and it's always those shifts that I think are more interesting than simply just saying, okay, well now we have this thing in, and I don't think Kaveh Khanum is a fad. I don't think Darkroom Collective is a fad. But it's not this, so it's not the same thing, right? So I'm looking. I always want to be open to sort of like, well, maybe, like for example, slam, right? I remember being at the Green Mill, just after my book came out in 1986, my second book, Victims of the Latest Dance Craze. I just won the Lamar Prize. And I got invited to read in Chicago at the Green Mill and be the featured reader at the Slam. Now, I had known about open readings because living in New York, because open readings was simply just were slams without the judging, right? You simply just go in, you sign in, and you read. You know, for my first book, my first book came about being in an open reading. My publisher was an open reading. She heard me read. She really liked the work, and I got the first book out of that. So I knew it generally, but when I got to the Green Mill and I actually saw what was going on, I saw this thing with competition going on, and I was just appalled because there was this really wonderful African American woman that was writing this really sensitive poem. It was really a beautiful poem about her family or something that happened to her, and it was in a bar, right? So it was like you know, whatever it was, quiet. Hey, give me a beer, man. And after she read a pseudo hip kid. And I use the word pseudo because what he did was he got up on the stage, put on a hat, put on sunglasses, became a persona, right? And then read garbage. It was like the ceiling fans are going around and the neon lights are so strong. Yes, lights on Broadway. Yeah. I mean, it was really it was on that level, right? He won. He won hands down, and I left that reading. I was like, well, this is a regional thing. That's what they do in Chicago. It's kind of fun, but it'll never become national, right? Right. So crystal ball for me is really a bad thing. I mean, I totally missed that one, right? It took over the world, right? It ate the world, right? But that's what I mean. Sometimes they're fads, and sometimes they're shifts. You can't always tell when it's a shift and when it's just a fad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I agree. I think Kavikalam is not a fad.
Yeah.
Especially because there's so many different kinds of voices, in there. So it's not like one, monolithic thing echoing out. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's wise to know that you do not know what's
my
coming,
crystal ball's not bet on me.
But it is exciting,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And if anybody here wants to publish my manuscript like that, let me know.
That only happened once. It'll never happen again. Right?
That's a great way to get published. So I guess now we'll open the floor for the audience. If you have any questions out there, we would love to answer them.
Yeah, both of us. It's okay.
Yeah. No. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, Camille, so how are you right now? You're working towards establishing yourself as a poet, I guess. So you're studying for it, or how are you going about to get there?
Yeah, it's like one of the mysteries of poet life, right?
Sure is.
This is, yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of like what Cornelius was saying, a series of yeses, right? So, I got an MFA at Columbia, and I kept writing, and I eventually got some poems published here and there, and kept writing. I won the Discovery Boston Review contest from the 92nd Street Y, and then I won this chapbook contest in the same year, so that was a really big boost for me. And I think from there, I just feel really confident and propelled forward, and now I'm in a stage where, the beautiful thing about the chapbook, one of the things I really love about it is that for someone like me, I'm a pretty slow writer, and I'm very careful, and I don't really like to rush the process of publishing or collecting my work and getting it out there. So it's really nice to have the chapbook as a stepping stone to something bigger, and to have it out there being my little ambassador. And the incredible thing was when I won the contest, I was, of course, thrilled, and I loved the chapbook series so much. But a part of me, I guess I didn't really think it through to the part where people would actually read it. I was like, I have this beautiful little book. It's a beautiful little gift. Oh, my God. And then after it came out, people would be like, oh, I read your chapbook. And I'm like, you did? Oh, my goodness, this is amazing. I forgot that this was going to happen. And the thing is that, the chapbook goes out immediately to people who are, members of the PSA. So it's 250 people are just reading it, or they just have it on their coffee tables, So that was a really great thing. And I think from there, now I'm in the stage where I'm working toward a full-length manuscript. I feel slight panic about that, and wanting to get it done. That's one part of the type A part of me, and the other part of me that's an artist and is whatever, is
just allowing, I mean, I have this work out already that people are reading or have read, and now I'm like just working toward the next stage of finishing the book and sending that out and trying to get that published. So I mean, like, I guess what I would say is that I'm going to readings. I'm being at a reading right now. I'm like involved in the poetry world in various ways. I work with the Brooklyn Book Festival. I teach at Manhattanville College and help run their program there, and working with their new online magazine, the Manhattanville Review. Check it out online. And so I'm very in this world of poetry in New York, and I think that's one of the ways that I kind of keep myself afloat in a career way. But I just enjoy it, and I'm excited by it. So it's not even like I'm necessarily thinking about it in that calculated fashion. It just kind of my interests just kind of feed my career, I guess. So it just pushes itself forward. Other questions?
Yeah, back.
Is there anybody at Columbia whose guidance particularly helped you?
Oh yeah, I mean, Columbia was great, and I would say Timothy Donnelly and Lucy Brock-Broido were both they're just like really good teachers, and they're so committed and great, and I love them, and they were both really wonderful. I mean, I was in Lucy's thesis class, and for thesis she would have all of her students come over to her house with her cats and just like be there with you like for hours, working with each student, and she would have individual meetings with you and go over every page of it, your manuscript, your thesis. And that was amazing. And Timothy was such a dedicated teacher as well, and I'm still friends with him, and he's still like roots for me. And I also made like really great friends at Columbia who were my classmates that I'm still connected with. So yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, Kate.
So I have a question for both of you. I like what you were saying about open doors.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that many poets at least think that what they're experiencing mostly in the world is closed doors, or doors slamming as soon as they get close to them. And I think that I always feel like, what you were saying partly about open doors wasn't just that people are offering you jobs
Right.
and so on,
No.
but that people are offering you to talk with you about your poetry.
Yes, exactly. Right.
And I always feel that there's too much of an emphasis on some sort of track. So when people think of open doors, what they're thinking of is simply jobs and publication.
Yeah.
Or publication which leads to jobs.
Yeah.
And I like that your open doors was somewhat different.
Yeah, that's right. I was fortunate. Like I said, I was lucky. When I say that, that's partly what I mean. I was lucky that my orientation wasn't, because the career track wasn't as clearly delineated as it is now, right? We don't have this sort of, that mechanism wasn't fully in place when I came around. So that was also part of, again, that's what informs me, is that it just can't be, here's a job or here's a name, or, here's a, it basically, it basically just finding ways of having people just keep you going, right? You can call somebody up, you can send a manuscript, you could have a cup of coffee, you can, like you were saying, Lucy went down and just ripped every line and just said, look, I am paying attention. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm paying attention to this, and it isn't about publication, it's about making you the best poet you can become, right? Or maybe shooting for what Lucy's enthusiasm is. Yeah. Right? Because even if you can't fully see it, she sees it on some level, right? She's actually, I do this with my when you come in with students, you see it. You can see it. I mean, you publish, so you know it. You have the same. You have the same. I'm sure you have the same experience where basically you just see it. Even if they don't fully see it, and you want to get that across to them, right? You want them to know that is, it is there. It really is there. It is really hot. I really want you to know. So yes, sometimes the doors really close a lot. I think something is even more dangerous is that sometimes we close the doors on ourselves. That we talk ourselves out of it, or we want to make sure that we feel so embarrassed and ashamed because we want to be poets in this culture where you aren't supposed to do that, right? Where it's seen as kind of a bourgeois way of living your life. You're not really seriously engaged in life because you basically want to sit in a corner and write. I mean, and so sometimes, depending on the circumstances of your upbringing or the circumstances of where you are, you will sometimes talk yourself out of it. I want to do something. I've got a real job now, right? Or I've stopped that for a while because I want to do I need to do something else. And sometimes it is encouragement in the sense that you have to let people go through those moments, but let them know that there's actually something that's really serious. The writing is really serious, and might be the most serious thing they're going to do in their life. And on some level, you want to convey that to them, right? Right? And hopefully you sort of keep them going. You keep them at it. Keep them going to the next thing. I mean, I'm really excited about her book, right? Because after reading the chapbook, my excitement was now the full length, right? I up the ante. I'm sorry. As I was saying, I should be saying this with her next to me, but there really is. I really have an excitement. I'm a fan. It's just simply I know her and we worked together for a while. I'm really a fan. It means that I'm going to track her work for the rest of my life, and I'm going to be excited about what comes next, right? Whatever the next thing is going to be. So I think on some level that's what I'm trying to get at. I see it, right, right. Yeah. And I'm not the only person, but if enough people are out there doing that, it buoys you, keeps you going, keeps you up. Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that. That excites me rather than terrifies me. I'm excited about that.
No, I have a colleague at Notre Dame. Fiction writer who said the worst question in the world you could ask a fiction writer is, when's the next book coming out? It's like being hit by a cattle prod. So when's the next book? When's the next book coming out? So I try to stop. Yeah, I was thinking cattle prod, but I was saying that.
Okay. I don't mind slight prodding. I guess I'll just really quickly say, I think that when you're a younger poet, I think that it's easy to interpret all of those moments as closing doors, because I think what you're saying is really what you want when you're in that stage. What you want someone to listen to you and to take you seriously and to tell you. I mean, to me, every time someone compliments my work, that's an open door. So I think that for somebody who's just starting out, that perception that things are closing is that they don't feel like someone is understanding them or listening to them or taking them seriously, and that's what's scary. Yeah. I mean, later, for me, I can't imagine ever feeling like doors are closing all the time at this point, because I just feel like I'm so lucky to be at this stage even. I mean, not even an established poet necessarily, but I feel like I've gotten so far from people listening and caring about what I'm saying, and that's so exciting to me that I'll never feel that way about the closed doors again. So I think it's just kind of getting to that point where you've pushed through a little bit, you've kind of nosed it open, and then you feel like there's more. And I think that's the attitude you should try to preserve at least.
Also,
I think that's all the time we have, right? Because someone's moving. So thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you.